Hmm.
So fresh how we flow, everybody get this down from us.
All right, sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. Had a little computer crash. Hopefully, I made it back in time.
You mean if they were spread out along the biggest? So the length of Africa is longer than 3959. Is that what the argument is?
I think that was his claim. Brian, do you remember?
What was that?
Peter's claim the other day of how people in Africa and another place could all see the sun at the same time.
Well, it crosses the path there. I mean, seriously, if the sun's out and you're in the light, you're going to see the sun. I mean, it's due to perspective. I don't know, man. But yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't quite following his point, but my point, and like I may be retarded for saying this, and I'll admit it, but if we can see in a radius of 3959, that doesn't limit the sun's reach of light being greater than that, is what I'm, like I said, maybe I'm retarded. Does it not make sense?
Doesn't limit the sun's.
Like, can the sun not light up a greater area than what we can see?
Yes.
Okay, that was my point. Like, the sun
Yeah.
can light up a greater area than we can perceive.
Yeah, I would say that.
Okay,
You
that
you can't see.
Yeah.
You need to recognize the geometric obviousness of what eventually discontinues our ability to see the sun when it's on its way away, so to speak, and that is incident angle and air density, the gradient, and the fact that we live on the surface where the air is densest, and that as the sun moves away, its incident angle approaches zero. And when you add the opacity of air to that, the sun's energy is essentially the light energy is absorbed by the air between you and it. Very similar, in fact, identical to if you're underwater in a pool, you can only see a light on the opposite wall from a certain distance. After that, there's just too much water in the way the mass itself literally absorbs all of the light energy, and you cannot perceive it anymore, even though it is still there directly in front of you, direct line of sight. You would be looking at it if not for all of that mass in your way. And exactly the same thing happens at the atmospheric scale.
Yeah, so basically, if you were standing on a complete flat level plane with no obstruction, and you're looking at the sun when we start to see it, and at the set, that would be a certain distance. But if you were in a balloon 20,000 feet higher, you would see the edge of that light be wider than what the person on the ground saw, correct?
Well, I don't know about an edge, but yes, you would perceive the sun in terms of its direct sunlight for a longer period of time than if you were at that spot on the surface. Yes.
Yeah. So it'd be a longer range of how the light covered the plane.
Yeah, and somehow, I mean, that's actually going to be a fairly significant difference between on the surface and, say, 2,000 feet up. But what's hilarious is that does not, like, that increase in time for your solar day that you would perceive at that altitude instead is so much larger a difference than just for the alleged fact that you are higher up on the ball and should be able to see it around the curve farther. You know what I mean? That change in aspect is insignificant. Yet somehow the length of the solar day is drastically changed by your fairly insignificant increase in altitude relative to rate of curvature, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get you. So if it was a ball, there'd be less length of light exposure, opposed to if it was flat, there'd be a longer length of light
Well,
exposure.
no, if it's round, there would be more as you go higher, but the question is how much more for how much higher? And we're only going a little bit higher, and we're getting a lot more than if it were due to curvature, for the fact that there is a difference like that.
Yeah, I got you. All right, back to Nazis.
Dude, I also put out a video called, I think, what is the best evidence for the globe? It's literally all about the sun angles, and on flat Earth, and how light distribution and triangulation works. And I think that's probably worth it. I'll put that in the Jumbotron if anyone wants. Take a look.
On the spring equinox and the autumn equinox, wouldn't half of the Earth have sunlight?
Yeah, the equinox is when it's equidistant and it rises due east for everyone. Yeah, man. All the globe evidence is actually in the sun. The sun is 100% proof of the globe.
What is the explanation for if the universe is expanding? Does that mean that right now I'm getting fatter and I just don't know it? Like, is everything in
Nope. You're in
everything?
you're in a gravitational field. You don't experience the expansion.
You're actually contracting.
Yeah.
But that is fascinating, because when you think the universe is expanding, imagine the amount of power, right? Because it's the universe, it's huge. But somehow this little Earth, the gravity is strong enough that it actually fights that expansion and remains the same size.
Is that what they say, or is the Earth expanding as well and we just can't feel it?
No, I think with the Earth expanding, we're bending space time or some shit like that somehow.
Well, the Earth is actually supposed to be contracting ever so slightly because of its velocity. We're allegedly doing 30,000 meters per second around the sun,
The
right?
the contraction is coming because of all the light crap on the inside. The expansion is because we're spinning so fast; it's obliquing us.
No, length contraction is a function of velocity against light squared.
That's what they're saying, man. I'm just saying.
Well, just know you're going to be fatter until you measure yourself.
But then the scale will shrink according to Lorentz contraction, and you won't be able to tell. But just know that you're fatter.
No, but since everything's expanding, it's all relative, so you will never be able to tell.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. You'll never be able to tell anything. You might as well just trust the people who tell things for a living.
Okay, so if if the universe is expanding, infinity is getting more infinite. It's getting bigger.
Getting more infinite.
Yeah, infinity is. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I had the question about it, but then I got distracted because my kid's yelling.
We call that a brain fart.
Yeah. Okay, give me just 1 second, because if everything's expanding like that. Oh yeah, this is the question. How do all of the molecules in the universe know how to expand, like which direction to expand into when gravity's pulling me in different directions? Does that make sense?
Directions don't make sense in space, so that question got lost on me, to be honest. I was kind of lost from the beginning.
Okay. Yeah. So if the universe is expanding into nothingness, getting bigger somehow, because it can do that now, how do all of the molecules of the universe know? Like, how could they be expanding when they're supposed to be being pulled every which way from gravity?
Let me
From,
help you
say,
with this one.
yeah, because that's yeah.
Let me modify your question, because there's a
Please.
temporal aspect that will help you simplify the way you're thinking about this mechanism and their interrelationship. And they're saying that there was a beginning of time at the bang. They love to analyze the first few femtoseconds, nanoseconds of whatever happened there when all matter came into existence and originated from a single point in the universe. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but you know, a few milliseconds after the cessation of the bang part, well, don't you know there's all the mass? And all of it has to be expanding necessarily at sub-light speed for there to be mass. So the question really is, immediately after the Big Bang, with all of that mass concentrated in exactly the same spot, how did it escape itself with all of that mass right there? How did it blast out and gravity just allowed that to happen? And it didn't collapse back in upon itself in another matter of a few seconds. I think that's the question you're trying to craft. Am I right?
Yeah, so you just said what I said, but like not how I said it, but kind of how I was saying it, you know? Yeah.
I included a temporal aspect and brought it back to T0.
Yeah, you hear that, Globies? T0, fuckers.
Yeah, the inception of everything, the point of the Big Bang, when the one infinitesimal particle exploded outward in every direction to create everything that we know. I follow.
No, it did make sense because, like, if it, I'm not even going to attempt to repeat it, but if it does it, if it's because they say it wasn't an explosion, it was actually like a big stretch or something, like, but the idea that it was all once touching and now isn't touching, and maybe I have that the whole universe fit on the head of a needle or something like that. How would it escape the gravity of that? Because wouldn't that be the most? How would I don't
The
know.
largest mass
Yeah,
in one point
right,
ever to
exactly.
exist?
Yeah, right. So why
Yes.
would it just all of a sudden just decide to give up doing that?
Because Newton was totally wrong.
That
Dude,
can't
I think-
possibly have anything to do with it.
Dude, I think Newton was a worse plagiarist than Einstein. Changed my mind.
I mean, with the way Stone described it, it's true. Like, why did we never question the fact that the Big Bang even happened? Because at that mass level, that density of that one tiny, tiny, tiny speck was so dense. How did it just expand? It should have just stayed falling into a big black hole, you know?
Yeah, nothing like so. I didn't question anything about the Big Bang when I was, didn't care. Everything made sense. It all made sense in my head. And then as soon as I became a flat earther, none of it made sense, and I realized how retarded it was. What that is the effect of the curtain falling down completely. It's not like you looked behind it; that thing just went invisible and transparent all at once.
Oh no, man! I thought the Big Bang, and I was like, no, nothing can come from. I don't know where it came from. I believe in.
Dude, it's like once there was nothing, then there was everything. No one and nothing caused this. Don't worry about it. Don't look into it.
It's like, but yeah, Lawrence Krauss, man, when he talks about it, it's funny, man. Says, yeah, with the magic of gravity, anything is possible. So gravity was there, just hanging out before everything happened. Huh? Okay.
Dude, it is the magic of gravity. It's like, how do you explain that? It's like, well, gravity. How do the stars move? Gravity. Why is the Earth the shape? Guess what? Gravity. How come it keeps it in perfect orchestration? Gravity again.
But it's all a down force.
What keeps the atmosphere in? Gravity. How does a pressure containing gradient work? Gravity. How do you have air pressure next to a non-vacuum? Gravity. Literally the Band-Aid holding the whole nonsensical bullshit ball together.
Gravity. I put this.
I got to
Hey,
cycle
host.
this browser, man. Everything's coming in so choppy.
Hey, you hosts, better do your job. There's some hands up there.
Oh, I feel chastised. You're very correct.
Yeah, D's got one up. That's true. I'll be back in a sec.
What's up,
I
D?
don't-
Damn it! I was trying to holler at Stone, but he just said he's got a dip.
He's just refreshing. He'll be right back.
I think here let's let Flats go. I'll wait for Stone to get back because I want to see what he thinks.
That's cool. I'll be quick. I was watching a red pill video, and there was this physicist on there, long black hair, long dark hair, and he was talking about the energy of the vacuum, and he quantized it as measuring the energy of a vacuum in a cubic centimeter. And then he went on to the 10 to the negative 17 Torr. But then he claimed that our universe or our solar system is a black hole. Like, have you heard of that guy?
Sounds like my boy Nassim.
Maybe he had an accent. It wasn't like, I don't know what Bonacci is, but it wasn't Bonacci. He looked like Bonacci kind of, but
Long hair.
yeah.
Yeah, that's Nassim. I like that dude.
Yeah, he brought up some weird points, but like he was like, I don't understand the energy of a vacuum. Like I can kind of conceptualize it, but it's I don't know.
He's using vacuum, but he knows like, because he said it before in interviews. He's like, yeah, we can't call it the ether, but it's there. So that's what he means. So the energy is like, in his theory, it's coming from these Planck-sized oscillations in the ether, essentially. Kind of like how the electron is like an oscillation, just like minified even smaller to the Planck scale.
Yeah. I just didn't understand how he was claiming I forgot if he said our solar system was a black hole. Like he came to theorize like after he measured or theorized the energy in the vacuum, then he considered us being in a black hole.
Yeah, so that's the one thing about his theories that I don't really agree with, because I don't really believe in the whole black hole thing. But
Yeah,
yeah, so that's where I kind of diverged from him. But I think he kind of has a point. I mean, like, you look around, it's all black out there. I think we're in the center of something, and mathematically maybe it says a black hole, but maybe mathematically is wrong, and maybe it's just something else. He's got a point, but I just don't like calling it a black hole, because I just don't think black holes exist.
Yeah, I was following him for a while until he said we're in a black hole, and I'm like, what? Wait a minute. And real quick, Shane, Alan, do you guys have any thoughts or theories, like the sky above us, the stars and everything, do they go below our plane
No.
or just around our plane at our horizon?
Second one, definitely just around the plane. Nothing goes below your feet, right? That's like the stereographic Pac-Man lads who are like, listen, we don't want to look into angular resolution and optics, but we're sure that when you don't see the sun, it dips below your feet and does a teleportation back to the other side. It's like, yeah, I understand if you only had your observer point and like you never saw another observation of a sun, like you didn't have a friend in Africa who's like, hey, when you don't see the sun, I see it. Like, I mean, I think that would make sense, but otherwise, yeah, I think that it's definitely due to perspective, angular resolution loss, light attenuation, atmospheric opacity. All of that is why it appears to set and go below. It doesn't actually go below your feet. The thing that gets us into trouble is the math is based on a circumference, and a circumference as it goes across the plane or beneath your feet is identical. So the math can be predictive either way.
Okay, so when a constellation is not visible from us, is it visible to someone else around the
Yes.
plane, or does it disappear completely? due to like day and night with our sun?
So both, right? When you don't see a star, it's probably on the other side of the world in darkness. But the precession of the equinox, literally the speed of the sun and the speed of the stars, solar time and sidereal time are like 4 minutes apart. So that synchronous spin means that eventually constellations slip into and out of visibility behind the light of the sun. So that's how you get the annual precession of when certain constellations are visible in northern and southern hemisphere, depending on the season.
So the constellation's set for certain people.
Well, at some point they'll set for everyone, because when the constellation is right behind the sun, no one will see it for a long time, right? Because it'll be 4 minutes behind the sun for a long time. It'll be trailing slowly until it leaves its giant well of luminosity and becomes visible again.
That's it keeps losing an additional 4 minutes per day, is what you really mean there.
Yep, that is what I mean.
So it essentially moves almost as we would perceive it. It almost moves across the sky at the same rate as the sun, but it changes annually based on that 4 minutes a day over the entire year. You're going to see the rest of the sky at night when the sun's not there the other part of the year. But again, it will still be going overhead at roughly the same rate at which the sun does.
Yep, thank you, Stone.
So would you say, is that the flat part of the axis of evil? Is it aligned with that, or is it something else?
It's aligned with the sun's inclination to the observer, right? So
The
like
axis of evil is a totally different phenomenon to do with the CMB, right?
Yeah, but it's related to the ecliptic plane, which is based on the sun angle, I think.
Yes.
Which is all observer based on, the inclination of the sun angle, because that 23.4 degree, like that space is an aspect of the sun's like 5-degree tilt, and its inclination on your azimuthal grid, it appears to wobble 23.5 degrees annually.
Thanks, that's cool.
But then they were like, hey, actually the whole world is tilted at that angle. That's why it looks like that for everyone. Don't worry about it, guys.
So Flats said something earlier, and then about vision and light coming in, and then Stone had said something interesting too about as you elevate, how much should you be able to see of the sun for how long, and I thought that was really interesting. So Stone, is there a way to like math that, like judging by the sphere? So like we see, when we look from the space station, we see a gradient, but it's not a very big gradient, right? Where the night becomes day becomes night. It's not very large. So is there a way to kind of math that out, like how much of that sunlight you should see as you go up?
Well, I'm sure you could turn it into a formula, but it's going to have quite a few variables.
Yeah.
Air temperature, air density, cleanliness of the air, the types of particulates that are in it between you and there, cloud masses between you and there, other atmospheric disturbance types, wind. All these things are going to be affecting the gradient, so to speak.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and again, even after you throw them all in, how much variability is there going to be there? One day to the next in terms of the advantage. I'm not really sure how I would quantify that, other than to just take the measurements, get your own photometer out and try it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then as well, how that's going to vary with latitude and season. There's a lot of variables in there.
Yeah, I wonder if anybody's done it before, just like tracked how much light by altitude you can see during sunset, just going up.
If somebody has done it, I'm sure we would have heard about it by now.
Yeah, maybe. Another thing was in the same ballpark is the gradient itself. If the sun is far away and it's shining on a sphere, and then we have this simultaneous refraction and diffraction around this sphere, wouldn't we not have such a small gradient at the line, like a line? Like when more
Well,
light
yeah,
be bouncing around it,
that exactly what I was
right?
trying to point out. Yes,
Okay.
most
Yeah.
I think more due to the alleged radius of the Earth than the distance of the sun.
Mhm.
I think so. Sure.
Yeah. So that's something like when they bring up refraction, I think, and diffraction, that's something we can like throw right back at them. Like, oh yeah.
Oh, they're going to just say, "Oh yeah, show me the data, show me the proof, blobby, blobby, blobby." You know.
Mhm.
So
7
that's your opportunity, man. Go ahead and do it. Get a photometer. They don't cost that much. Get it prime now. Prime yesterday.
Go ahead, Laylee.
Oh, hey, several months ago, I saw this debate. It was Witsit, and I don't know who partnered with him. It may have been Alan or some Shane or someone else, but I'm pretty sure it was Witsit. And then it was those two on the flat side with two British Globers. And I remember one of them was bald, maybe. I can't remember, but I don't remember their names. Anyhow, the Globra guy, he, as a trying to prove, that we're a globe, he showed us the picture of the sun that was taken from a deep underground neutrino detector laboratory or whatever. It's like, you know what I'm talking about. It's a deep underground neutrino detecting laboratory. And so his argument was, so it looked like a bright orb, like the sun, a very pixelated. And so he was like, look, this is the proof that the deep underground neutrino detector is picking up the image of the sun. And so anyway, so it got me thinking, and I thought, well, there's only two answers. Either whatever they're seeing is they're just lying and it's just bunk, or I'm wondering, like, it could be Rahu. If it really is that the neutrino thingy wingy picked up these neutrinos, then I thought, well, maybe it's Rahu, because Rahu is described as being the sun, while Ketu is described as being the moon, and that they are underneath the flat earth in some versions of the cosmology, the Vedic cosmology. So I don't know. I don't know why I was thinking of that, but maybe somebody, one of the teachers, have something to say about it. And speaking of teachers, I know that most of you probably already subscribe, but I always try to remind all our lovely flat earthers to support our wonderful teachers, because they put out so much incredible content for us, all for free. So if you're not already subscribed, please do. Thank you. Bye.
Well, I bet Shane's got a mouthful ready to go about Rahu and Ketu.
I feel like we've already done this though. Have we? Have we not?
Oh yeah, a couple times.
Okay, I'm good then. I agree.
Uh-oh.
I think. Well, no, I think there's different understandings within Vedic cosmology, right? So I'm good.
Hey, with the Vedic cosmology, when do they say anything about the Earth, like prior to anyone doing anything to it? Like, because in a lot of stories, the Earth is here; it's just covered in water.
Oh, I mean, there's so many versions of Vedic cosmology. Who knows? I think I don't know. There's so many versions of it. And some of them like totally contradictory to each other. So yeah, I mean, there's so much ancient writings. It's literally, there's like the largest body of ancient writings is from the Sanskritic world. So I don't know. It's hard to say. I think at some point they just put in a bunch of disinformation there on purpose. I think the Cabal, before the Cabal got to the Sumer and Mesopotamia and Babylon, they came and got India first, because they've been trying to annihilate the Aryans in India, according to the Vedic texts. Like 5,000 years ago, there was a very, very huge battle where they tried to kill off the Aryans in India. And there was a huge bottleneck. And so the Aryans were greatly reduced in population in India because there's several racial types in India. People don't realize that. They think India is just one homogeneous place. But the term Aryan is actually Sanskritic, and it means noble, or it's a really you would need a whole paragraph to really kind of describe or what that word really means, the definition of it. But part of it is, one of the meanings is actually white, but another meaning is pure. Another meaning is, pure as in character, noble as in like designed by God, like, the noble metal, something like that, So yeah, it's a very interesting word, Aryan, and it's interesting that anyway, so there's a connection between the Druids, the Druidic culture, the Celtic culture, like musically and linguistically, they're related to the Sanskritic Indo-European language, and also like the Druids, the Celtic music is actually very closely related to classical music of India. So it's very interesting. I mean, it goes back really far, and I think with time things get they get mixed up and stuff. And so Cabal went very hard on India way before they ever got to Babylon, and because they've been slowly moving westward and infiltrating. They go and they infiltrate the population, become one of them, and then try to rot it from the inside, the Cabal, Hello?
India before Sumeria, huh?
What's that?
India before Sumeria?
Totally. Yeah. According to the Vedic text, yeah. They were there 5,000 years ago. Like Arjun, who is the main protagonist of one of the biggest epics. I mean, they call it mythology, but really in India, it's called history. It literally is categorized as history. And Arjun, if you take the J and you turn it into a Y, like if you presented that name Arjun to a German, they would say Aryan. And he's referred to always as Aryaputra, which means son of Aryan, So yeah. So the Cabal's been after India for a long, long time.
Yep, and everywhere else. But yeah, they clinched those places first, probably.
Yeah, they decimated the Aryans there because the Aryans in India, the descendants of the Aryans in India, they kind of have more of a Mediterranean look, like Southern Mediterranean look, like tan skin. Because there's also the Munda group, which is kind of more proto-Australoid looking. So if you go to India, I mean, of course, since everyone's been there for so long, there's, some mixing bound to happen. But you can see clearly the different racial types in India. Like there are Indians, 100% Indians that look very like Asian. They look like Tibetan or Nepali and then there's people in India that totally look Ethiopian or black. The hair might be a little less tight curls, but the features and everything very similar. And then you have the, Aryan looking, which they're not very dark and they have more like Mediterranean type features. But there's very few, like the Brahmins, like they went after the scholars. And so the Brahmins are very few, like there's only about 3% Brahmins in Hindu India. So of course they go after the scholars and the warriors. That's who they're going to go after first. But in that history, itihas means history. And in the itihas of those stories, they clearly talk about a bottleneck of population because so many men were killed in this really, really big war that happened. So they described the war and stuff, and it sounded like a world war because they talk about all the known countries participating on one side or the other side, and so there was a lot of death that happened. But yeah.
Pretty crazy.
Hey, speaking of Jews and Nazis, I noticed that there's another space happening. I'm kind of tempted to check it out, but I don't want to feel like I'm ditching you guys.
Is that the other Jew space? Nah, I condone that.
Don't ditch us, because we have a lot of knowledge here.
Well, the other one, let's see. I think that's Witsit and whoever his buddy is that he's doing spaces with. I forget. He has the picture from the dude of Jurassic Park. Man, my pop culture is lacking so much right now. I'm sorry. I've conveyed none of that to you guys.
Well, I don't want to do anything to make my teachers angry. Trying to be the teacher's pet.
Yeah, there's no demerits for going to a Witsit space that talks about Jews, to be honest.
I don't even see it.
You don't have Jew radar? Not
I
going
don't
off?
have to. Man,
Is it not beeping right now super hard?
something's off. It might,
You better get it recalibrated, bro.
might be corrupted.
You're gonna need that where you're going or whatever.
The latitude dependent correction.
You imagine going to that land with no Judar, boy, you're gonna be in trouble.
Man,
Wait, I thought Alan was gonna show us some that documentary or something.
Yeah. Well, after this, we'll watch it.
That's
Wicked.
Man, it's late for you guys on the East Coast. What are you guys doing up?
I'm always up.
The night just started. I'm not going to bed
Yeah,
till
it's
8 a.m.
12:30 here already. Whatever, man.
Do you guys take naps during the day or something? How do you make it?
Never met her. I drink brushtail coffee during the day, and it keeps me going.
penguin free since 2003.
You guys know how, like, in sports, they're like, oh, you got to drink Gatorade to stay hydrated and get those electrolytes going or whatever, right? You guys know if you drink brushtail coffee, it does all of that for free.
I'm such a baby though. I can't drink coffee without milk in it.
Man, why would you drink black coffee? When you can
So-
add milk to it.
So what about this this graticule and the feasibility of a sphere working to navigate a plane?
You what, mate?
I said, so what about this graticule thing and the feasibility of using an ellipsoid to navigate a plane? Like how feasible is it really in practice?
Well, everybody uses the stars, right? So you see in a hemispherical view with rising and setting, things, rise and set, and you have denoted the prime meridian and a base what do you call it? A base divisor line from which to make measurements. So like there's no way to navigate without using that. And the globe is just the continuation of that hemispherical model with a mathematical reified bottom. So like it works both ways, I guess, is the point. And the graticule is really, for everyone who doesn't know, it just means the longitude and latitude gridded network line, mostly in a spherical shape, because geographic graticule is of course a sphere. And that's just based on the celestial sphere. You have the stars being the main model, the geographic graticule being the downsized scale model of the stars that we use to navigate on the Earth. I mean, we pretend that one is the Earth, but really they're both just models of the stars.
Right. So then, now this is important because using that, like it's not perfect, right? They have to make corrections and stuff. So like, what are the corrections? Like, All right. How off are things? Put it that way. Like how, if you're using deflection of the vertical, how severe is it off from the make believe model? You know, the mathematical ellipsoid, and how severe are the corrections that they have to make on a large scale?
Well,
Well,
where would you think there'd be more, and where would you think there'd be less?
I would think large scale, of course.
Well, the south, right? The south, further south you go, the bigger the gravitational the differences or whatever, they get more pronounced. I think way down there, because
Oh, you
that's when
mean north and south? Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
of course.
that's when it becomes more incongruous with the stars. And when they're trying to use it, the deflections become greater the further away from the north you go, pretty much.
So do you know how severe they are? Like, I guess angle wise.
I mean, we got a whole bunch of published on my database. We can take a look. Let's see.
I think one I pulled for the Battle of the Beams Prez said this is in the north, I'm assuming, but it was 30 arc seconds or something. That's pretty crazy.
There's that big issue with Australia, right? There's so much equipotential differential in Australia that they write papers and papers and papers about it because it's pretty far south, and they blame
Right.
all the deflections on the gravitational equipotential is so rough down there, right? Well, no, it's because the deflections are a little bit bigger. Let's see what I can find.
Ah, so they're making these larger and larger corrections, and they're correcting the ellipsoid and matching it to stations on Earth, right? Or is it the other way around?
No, so there's the geoid and the ellipsoid, right? The geoid would be what, the ground with the basic ground level with the geoidal model with the different equipotential difference or whatever, and then you have the ellipsoid, which is supposed to be for like general sea level. But really, I think that's horseshit. I think the reasoning is lying. I think that the ellipsoid is really meant for the stars, and that the geoid is meant for the Earth, and that when you have astrogeodetics, those are actually combining the astrogeodetic deflection. So like they're taking the geographic graticule and they're aligning it to the celestial sphere. And when they don't line up, like when point P on the celestial sphere is a little bit off from the same point P on the geographic graticule, the difference that it's off gets attributed as a deflection of the vertical. That difference gets attributed and then put in celestial navigation catalogs to get back to that point. So when they're using that same star, they know that it was this far off of point P on the sphere to the graticule, so they know they have to make that same correction when using it to navigate to get back to that point. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. But so like, are they tying those like the coordinates? Those get mapped out, but then they make these corrections, and are they ever correcting 2 points on Earth, like the from the horizontal datums and whatnot?
Are they ever correcting 2 points on Earth?
Yeah, so
No,
like
no,
so
never.
I've read that they make corrections like with the ellipsoid. They'll use a point, like say a monument that is well established, its area, location, whatever, and they'll do the deflection of the vertical thing and kind of adjust. They'll make adjustments for the ellipsoid. But I'm confused. Are they making adjustments for the ellipsoid, or are they making adjustments like so the ellipsoid changes a little bit to match where that point is, or are they doing it the opposite way to where that point moves a little bit to match the ellipsoid model? I think it's the ellipsoid changing its position.
Yeah, so they're measuring the Earth. They're creating an ellipsoid. When the Earth measurement doesn't match the model, they mark the ellipsoid. So the ellipsoid becomes the ellipsoid based on the corrections to the geoid. Does that make sense?
Oh,
It's really
they're doing it to the geoid.
it's really convoluted. No, the geoid is not involved in the correction. I'm just relaying it because we have the
Okay.
geoid and the ellipsoid, but when they're
Right.
really correcting, like so they're measuring the Earth, they're looking at the geoid, they're looking at the ground, right? And when it
Yeah.
doesn't line up, they're correcting the ellipsoid. The only thing they can correct. They can't correct the
That's what
Earth.
I was thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they're correcting their model, and their model gets like continuously corrected until it matches, and that's the process of astrogeodetics for sure. In fact, that's what they did with satellites super hard. As soon as they had satellites, they
Yeah.
astrogeodetic the whole world. They got every corner. They did everything that was gray or they didn't have good data on. They got data on, and that's when we got all the maps. And of course, the geographic reticle became hardcore.
Right.
But yeah, they wouldn't need a reference ellipsoid if what they were measuring matched the thing in the first place. That's what Indio says, right? It's a very, very, really well said point. They
Right.
wouldn't need the reference ellipsoid at all.
Any Globies want to contest that?
There's globies here? I didn't know.
You're gay and wrong. Sorry, that was somebody
Probably not, but just putting it out there, putting the feeler out, trying to get someone to push back on it. Because I've been going into it and I've been trying to disprove it, kind of like.
Dude, it's hard to disprove anything to the Globers, and it's hard to talk about this subject because they don't know any more than you do, and they're way more confident than you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've been trying to disprove it in favor of the Globe. I've been trying to disprove what you guys are talking about, but it just keeps aligning. It's pissing me off. But at the same time, it's a good thing.
Well, you'll never disprove that by making the geoid not aligned, dude. They have astrogeodetic the shit out of that. The stars match the globe almost 100%. They have perfected it, dude.
Right. Yeah. And so that's the thing. Like you said, a lot of people don't understand enough of it, but they're way too confident that it works, so it must be. And that was the question that I was posing, right?
Does it work? Yes.
But yeah. I just want to have a really good and broad kind of basis. I don't need to know super details, but I want to have a broad basis because I'm going to start explaining this shit to like family and friends.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely papers on it you can read. There's definitely a whole geodesic tab on my database that's all full of that stuff. Astrogeodetics is definitely a term. I remember when I first came to Twitter, I started saying that to people, and they looked at me like I was retarded. No, I can't convey to you how important it is for astrogeodetics. And they're like, "You made that up." I'm like, no, like that's when they're trying to combine like the stars and the ground. Like it's what I'm trying to tell you, and they're like, "No, you're stupid, and that's not real." And it's like, okay, well. But yeah, dude, there's read a couple of the papers that you should look into the deflection of the vertical stuff too. In actual surveying, that's super important. Like I didn't realize how important it was until I learned all the stuff that I know now. Because when I was looking into surveying, I was like, oh, they're not measuring the Earth, they're just looking at the stars. That's a little weird, but I didn't look into it further. I'm just like, oh, good, it's not a sphere, right? They're looking at the sky. They're not even measuring the fucking ground. That's what I took away from it. And then later I'm like, but why? Why is it always back to the sky? What's in the sky? What are they aligning? And then I was like, oh, the whole deal is the sky. The whole shebang is about the sky. Okay, now I see the picture.
Yeah, attacking the deflection to the vertical is, if you want to show how you can falsify it, it seems like this idea that they're saying, what was it, like a mountain nearby is affecting the gravitational potential of the plumb bob, which makes it like, that's ridiculous, right? But they had to have an excuse to make the deflection to the vertical make some kind of sense, but that's a flimsy excuse, right? It's a flimsy idea. But they stick to that. I mean, you should hear Bacon. I don't know if you know who he is, but Bacon, there was a whole thing about the plumb bobs never being pointing towards the center, and all this kind of stuff. But regardless, it's worse in Australia, which is a big point too. At the outer edge, the alignment to the star is going to be even further off because you're out of the furthest point that we know of, at least. But yeah, that's where the fallacy is, I'd say. Wouldn't you, Shane?
I was playing with my dog, to be honest.
Oh, yeah, attacking the deflection to the vertical idea. That's where you can see the.
Yeah, you feel like it, that's the whole thing. That it's like, oh, well, it's a little off this geodetic measurement. We're just gonna put it in a book somewhere, and it's like, why do you keep looking at the sky though? I thought you were measuring the ground. Yeah, dude, Indio's got a really good base on that and a really good couple of videos. And then also the southern component. Like, watch how little the vertical deflects in the north when you're not trying to comport to a geodesic coordinate system, and watch how little. Hey, and watch how much it comports when you're in the south and way past the equator trying to comport to the same model.
Yeah, the dog was just like facts.
He was like, "You said we're gonna go out 2 hours ago."
So, hey guys, I'm hanging up for the night, man. Peace out, everybody.
Later, Brian.
Good stuff.
Just
Later,
remember, we're not moving. It's all fake and gay.
Bye, Brian. Good night. We love you.
Hey, so what? Oh, go ahead, Flats.
Yeah, maybe I'm too polite with my hand. My salad game is a little off. But if I could retract space time back to what the ambassador was talking about with seeing the sun, like, does that relate to? There's a claim where like someone down deep in a well can look up at the day sky and see a star like it's nighttime. Is that like the same principle, or is that something different?
Never heard of it. Sounds interesting. Now I want to try it. Does anyone know where a well is?
Yeah, I heard Pysoctus brought this up in the space a couple weeks ago. Apparently, there's a claim somebody deep down a well during the daytime hours, daylight hours, could see a star clearly in the sky. And I interjected, I'm like, it's like the principle of a pinhole camera. If you have a small shutter size, you block out all the ambient light, and then you can see or get a view of something in a distance.
Dude, you said, Pysoc. I thought you said a Glober brought it up. I was about to dismiss it without listening, but then I realized who you mentioned, and I realized that I should have listened.
Yeah, Pysoctus. He's on the fence. He's neither.
High school, I think.
Hey, so what about if
So for vertical deflection, can you explain that for me?
well, as far as I can, it's just basically a difference from what the plumb bob is saying compared to where it should be pointing according to the ellipsoid model. But these guys can give you a little bit better details than I can.
Yep. We're about to wrap up actually, but I'll go ahead and push that one out. So in celestial navigation, they base the position of the stars on the where they're at during the vernal equinox, right? They call it the first cusp of Aries. And then every day after that, they have it mapped out where the star is supposed to be, right? So when they do geodetic surveying, part of that is matching the sky to the ground, right? So what they're doing is they're tilting their theodolite or telescope or what have you straight up in the air at the 90 degree where they're supposed to be under some star from their catalog. And when that star when it's not directly over their zenith, right, it's like off by a couple arc seconds. That's where they go, oh, well, what do we do, boys? You know, what's a boy to do? So they came up with the idea that, oh, well, the gravitational potential here must be different. There must be some anomaly, and our plumb bob isn't going to the center of the ball like it normally would during normal uniform gravitational potentials. So we'll go ahead and tilt our theodolite a little bit, and that'll bring that star directly into our zenith, and we'll just record how much we deflected that. That's what deflection of the vertical is.
Well, thanks, but this doesn't have anything to do with like whether the Earth is a globe or not, because I believe it's a spherical construct.
Okay.
Well, you asked what it was, so I don't know how you don't know what your response is supposed to mean. But with that said, if there's any final questions or hands or anything like that, we're going to be wrapping up.
Alrighty, guys.
What's the point? And like looking at how a star is, I mean, what's the whole point?
Right. That's kind of what we're saying.
Yeah, why are we looking at the stars to measure the Earth and the sphere? That's correct. That's a very good point. Kind of like if it was a sphere, you wouldn't have to do that. But yeah, anybody else have any final questions before my dog goes crazy and I go take him out?
Peace out, guys. I'll check out.
Later. Oh, one more thing, D3. On those deflection of the verticals where they're producing these gravitational anomalies that are so strong that they're deviating a plub bob to the tune of, X amount of arc seconds. When they came out with GPS and they went around and surveyed everything, if the gravitational anomalies were so great that they were physically moving a plub bob to deviate like that, the frequency shift in light would have been measured and have to be accounted for, because GPS, being a time interval system, would be affected by that. And they'd make they make a uniform correction for a quote unquote equipotential at anywhere. So like they completely
Wow.
ignore. Yeah, dude, how crazy is that? They just go, oh, you know what? It's actually a uniform equipotential and we're good to go. So we'll just go ahead and correct with that. So they say that falls under the gravitational redshift for GR. But if it were true in the way that they deflected their plug bobs, they would have to do latitude dependent corrections for those locations. And they
Well, let
don't.
me make it simple. I worked as a driver before, and my GPS worked just fine, and I was able to navigate all over Las Vegas. So,
Yeah.
I mean, what's the problem with that? I mean, even if it's approximate.
Alan, that's crazy, bro. Like, that's a great point.
Yeah. So there was two experiments in 1960 and 1965, Pound Rebka and Pound Snyder, where they were measuring the that redshift in electromagnetic propagation. The first one they used, I can't remember, but the second one they did in 1965, it was cesium. I'm sorry, no, not cesium. It was a gamma ray. So that it wouldn't be influenced by electric and magnetic frequencies, and that still showed a frequency shift. So if they can make a detection difference at 75 feet, then there's 100% going to be corrections. If you're on a satellite that's 20,000 kilometers high and you're sending signals out, to people that are like 300 to 400 miles apart due to the contour of the Earth and all that, and these so-called gravitational anomalies, they would have to include those corrections because the gravitational potential would be way different, and that would affect the frequency shift, which would throw the whole thing off. They never do.
Yo, wow. Brilliant way to end it, bro. That's a super dope point right there. That's something I haven't heard or gotten into before. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, that's one that Alan came up with looking into it. And he's like, hey, Shane, remember that stuff you said that applies to the surface? And I was like, yeah, how come none of it applies to any of the satellites? No, that's a really good question, Alan. I don't know.
Like, dude, it only bends plug bobs and strings and stuff. It doesn't affect the frequency shift in light. It's like, oh, okay, I see. You guys are just playing fuck around again.
Yeah,
Okay.
some of them dual researching projects looking over at each other like, what do you got over there? Huh, how come your thing doesn't apply to my thing? I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, on the last GPS presentation I did, I break all that down and show some diagrams and stuff, like what it would look like.
Dope. I got to go check that out. I suggest everybody else check that out as well if you haven't already.
It's a banger, dude. The best argument against it is I drive my truck and my GPS works.
But dude, I got around Las Vegas by looking at my. Come on, you have no idea about the arguments about celestial navigation, how the stars play a role, what the geographic reticule is, how GPS works, what the reference frame is, how they coordinate, what an ECI reference frame is compared to an ECEF, how the speed of light changes in an east-west variant compared to north-south. All that's factored into pre-segment corrected corrections on your satellite. But yeah, you get around Las Vegas, or Earth's a globe. We got it. Anyway.
But hey, the ball's a ball,
note,
dude. So, all right, boys. Until next time. So join us tomorrow. We'll be doing research and reading night. I'm not sure what we'll be researching or reading, but we'll be doing something along those lines. And then Friday, of course, will be Flat Earth Friday, episode 110, I think it is. We're up to 110.
Well, thank you, Guardians of Physics.
Good times, good space. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll be back probably next week, do the same thing. Unless, of course, Brian already has a space, and then we'll just crash that one. Either way. Yes. Either way, all good. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And we're probably going to go hang out on Discord and watch some movies if you guys want to hang out. Or I hear there's an excellent What's That Space going on. You should check that out.
All right, lads. Catch you on the next one. Thanks for tuning